you have an issue and it's been your issue your whole life and it kind of defines you, there's a little bit of a scary part of it of like, well, who am I without this?
Welcome to the Jackie Ray Show.
Welcome back to the Jackie Ray Show. I'm, of course, your host, Jackie Ray. I'm very excited about my guest today, Amy Lori Luties. We met when I was covering the story about what happened at McBride High School, and they were being so passionate about fighting for their rights, which I thought was so beautiful. But they got the graduation that they deserved. But this is when I met this amazing mom of one of the students there. And luckily for me, we got to talking about some of the anxiety that I have around sleeping. And she's a therapist. She's a trained eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapist, a trained flash therapist, and a trained 4-blink flash therapist. We're going to explain all that in just a moment, but thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for being in our community and being such a good influence and having such good ethics. I saw you literally go through something that you could have easily pushed aside your ethics and you didn't. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. This is the question I always get when people are asking me about my journey as a journalist. I'm going to start with the same question. How did you know you wanted to be a therapist?
You know, I actually kind of stumbled into it. I was at a local community college, El Camino College in California. And I took this, what do you want to be when you grow up class? Mm-hmm. And it gave me a few options and therapist was one of them. And I really loved it. And so they said, if you like it, volunteer somewhere. And I volunteered at a shelter and I've been doing therapy type stuff ever since. And then, getting licensed and such. So that's where I started. Yeah.
Is it difficult for you to get into once you're into it, like building up the clientele and things of that nature?
I think a lot of it. So I started out with having several side jobs or part-time jobs. And then as my clientele built, I quit different jobs. And so, it wasn't that hard. Because I think a lot of times too, when you're doing good work, people refer people to you and stuff like that. So that's always helpful also.
So when you started out originally, was it just when people think of therapy, was it the traditional kind of therapy that most people think of?
So I started working at a domestic violence shelter and then I worked in South Central LA, which now is called South LA, but worked there for about 10 years. And so it wasn't necessarily the traditional therapy that most people think of because I'm working with kids in school, at home, stuff like that, playing basketball with the kids and all that stuff. I've got a few funny stories about that because I know so much about basketball and would talk so much about basketball. And then the kids would be like, you're not very good at basketball. I'm like, I never said that. I was good at it. I just like it, So it was very non-traditional. And I think too, working for 25 years with people who've been victimized in some way in our society has taught me to think outside of the box because, especially when you're working with kids who don't have anything. Literally, I've worked with kids who their apartment didn't have a floor. It was dirt, and they don't have lights. And so you have to think outside of the box. And so that's where I got into all this different types of EMDR and stuff like that, out of the box thinking, to be able to help because a lot of people can't really afford to be in therapy forever, even though I think a lot of people could really benefit from that. Not even bad people, just to be better individuals, myself or somebody else,
Right. You talked about kids kind of coming from really hard times and sleeping on the floor. Do you find, and I've talked about this a little briefly before, because they're so young and that's kind of their normal, do you find that they are almost shocked when they realize, oh, this isn't actually how life is supposed to be?
Yeah, I used to, when I was working at the agency that I was working with kids in LA, I would take every kid to USC, which I know I shouldn't say because my daughter goes to UCLA, but it was just the school that was closest to them, the college. And I would talk to them about this being a top university And, you know, as much as I would tell them like that there were kids that looked like them there, they didn't believe this white lady, right? So I went in and drove them, and they were just like, oh, wow, yeah, they have backpacks. Wow. Like, there's actually professors here that look like me too. And so it was a shock to them that that there were places that didn't have bars on the windows and stuff like that. So that's, I think, where my passion always came from, about trying to make affordable options and doing pro bono work and volunteer work and stuff like that, because there are people who are not lazy, who are really hard workers, who just weren't given the same opportunity for whatever reason, that could benefit from that. And so I really have a passion to help those people, because I think that they a lot of times work harder than anybody else in society, in my humble opinion.
I agree. Because they have to, because they're, so it's a little different. Yeah. So what exactly is flash therapy?
So flash therapy was born out of EMDR. There was a theorist by the name of Dr. Phil Manfield, and he developed flash therapy with the idea that in EMDR, it's a really deep dive into trauma, and the research is outstanding on it. Not everybody can afford that. And so with flash therapy, it kind of came about with the idea that the trauma just has to be in your working memory. It doesn't have to be something that you're actually focused in on. So if I say, at some point today, let's talk about your, sleep issues, but hey, did you hear about the sparks and what happened? And did you see what this happened? And right? Then it's in your working memory, but now I've distracted you. So it works in a distracted state. And then another theorist, who's also an EMDR trainer, Tom Zimmerman, he came out with something called the 4-blink flash. And there's some differences in it, but one of the differences is that you can use it at home for at-home use. So Tom Zimmerman had approached me. I actually got trained in EMDR. He was one of my trainers. And then he approached me at one of the conferences we were at and was like, hey, is this something that you can do? Because we already had an EMDR site that therapists meet with their clients on. And so we worked on it with my brother-in-law, who is a video game. I know that there's a much classier title, but a video game developer. He worked in that production for a while, so he knows all of that, kind of how to make things work. And so how 4-blink flash works is that you pick, like we give you like a tutorial about 10 minutes on what to do and how to do it and all that stuff. And then we have you actually watch a YouTube video. Any YouTube video on YouTube, there's, I believe, billions of them. Anything that's distracting. And the only one rule is that it can't have to do with what you're working on. So if you're working on, your husband leaving you, then don't do a beach video, because like maybe you got proposed to at the beach, right? If your dog passed away, don't watch cute puppy videos, right? So it's just stay away from that. That's the main rule. And then we walk you through how to focus on your video. And then we'll prompt you to blink 4 times as fast as you can in certain intervals. And then we bring your thing that you're working on into your working memory again in certain intervals that just says, hey, think of your bad memory. Now, all right, now watch it, put it in a container, watch it go far, far away. Now watch your video again. And I will tell you that I have used this with a lot of clients in a lot of different areas. Veterans, I have a contract with the VA to provide services with veterans, with sports players, like different types of sports, different athletes in different areas, anxiety, PTSD, trauma, fears, like fear of flying, stuff like that. And it's been really successful. And so the thing is that we put out there for $20 a month saying like, hey, if it works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, you have a free trial and it's really cheap. And so if it doesn't work for you, then it's no big deal. But if it does work for you, which it works for a lot of people that I've seen, I haven't heard many people that it hasn't worked for yet, but I am sure that they're out there as well, to be honest and transparent, right? but that's kind of the premise of it. And you watch your video for about 40 minutes. And most people will see a difference in the first session. Some people, it takes 4, 5, 6 sessions. And I tell people, if you've done 10 sessions and it hasn't helped, move on to a different issue, or perhaps this isn't a thing that's going to work for you.
Mm-hmm. I actually did 3 sessions. The first session wasn't, like you said, it wasn't one of those like, oh, okay, it's an aha moment. And then the second session was the one that I was like, holy crap. Because I think what I realized, even in the first session was, I have sleep anxiety for sure. I have busy brain. That's a clinical diagnosis and all that. But because I have such a hard time getting to sleep, even going to bed gives me anxiety. Like I just don't even want to try to lay down because I'm just going to be up. But at the end of the second session, I was just like, oh, time to go to bed. And as I was laying down, I'm like, oh God, I'm going to bed at a reasonable time. And it was like this epiphany. And then by the third time, I literally would do it like 30 minutes to an hour before bed, or 40 minutes to an hour before bed. And then go through my regular nightly routine. And normally I would go through my regular nightly routine and I would sit in bed and I would just toss and turn because I'm like, I know I'm not going to fall asleep. But the second time, just out like a light, because I wasn't thinking about not falling asleep, which is part of what was keeping me up. And so when I woke up the next day, I was like, the skeptic in me was like, there's no way me blinking 4 times and looking at these cute little pandas all over this screen is going to work. But it did. And the science behind it, I don't necessarily understand, but I think most of us just want the results anyway, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I had sent you a big Google Doc with all the research and stuff like that. But ultimately, like you said, if something works 99% of the time, which I'm not saying this does, that's not a, but if something were to work 99% of the time, there's still 1 out of 100 it doesn't work for. And so if you ask that one person, they're going to say, yeah, it doesn't work. And so I think it's really a matter of trying it out and seeing if it works for you, even though it works for more people than not. It's still an individual process to see how your brain works and how you work with it. And we have set up in there a little fire extinguisher. So if you have any issues along the way, you press it and we'll walk you through.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that maybe the people that it doesn't work for, they're a little closed off to it? Just that's what it really is there's a kind of a pushback against the therapy?
I don't know what the rhyme or reason is, but I think that is a big part of it. And also, I think that there are people who, in EMDR, we talk about how, like, for example, if you have an issue and it's been your issue your whole life and it kind of defines you, there's a little bit of a scary part of it of like, well, who am I without this? And I think that can get in the way. And I know that to be true of EMDR, I would assume that it is also true with flash and 4-blink flash.
I can see that. Now, I was reading some of the paperwork you sent over. I saw the original studies for this were done in the United States. Was it Australia and Uganda? Is that right? That's such a very culturally diverse sample size. Was it important to have a very diverse sample size?
I think so, because there are different people who are dealing with different issues, right? And even within the US, there's different people dealing with different issues, but absolutely, because everybody comes from a different belief system, a different culture, a different way of doing things. And some people believe in like the professional more and some people don't. And so it is really important to me to have a really good sample size of different people to be able to really make a claim of like, yes, this works for most people, Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of this. I think a lot of times people, I don't have a problem talking to a therapist because I'm just a chatty Cathy anyway. But I do know sometimes it's hard for people to open up. So is this another benefit of it is you can do this in the privacy of your own home. You can go at your own pace. Is that another reason why people are so receptive to it?
I think so. And so as a therapist, I use it with clients as homework sometimes. So this can be used with a therapist or without a therapist. But yeah, a lot of people don't want to be seen walking to a therapist office. A lot of people can't afford a therapist. And there are a lot of people who were kind of forced into therapy when they were little. And I think there's a lot of people who believe in a sense that if you go into therapy, you're never getting out, you know? And so I think it alleviates all those things. And it's things that you're doing already. I can guarantee you anybody who's watching this has watched a YouTube video this week, you know? And so, and it works with Vimeo too, but that they've watched a video this week. And so it's also something that they could do watching what they would already watch. And so I think that helps. And then to not have another person that they have to know, like, did I do it right? Did I not do it right? Are they judging me, you know, or whatever? Because a lot of people, whether it's cultural or, you know, people in the LGBTQI community who might think like, oh, I can't trust someone or I can't tell them about my issue or whatever. And they can do it in the privacy of their own home. Nobody has to know about it. And I think that does, as you said, you know, help a lot of people. But you also said you have clients that you have them do this as homework. So when you are going to a traditional therapist and you're doing the 4-blink therapy, how do those two things work together? Well, I'll tell you, it's put me out of business with a lot of clients. And honestly, that's my goal. That should be any therapist's goal, right? Is to put themselves out of business as much as possible and to have as many like past clients as possible that are past clients because they've been healed and not because like they're sick of you. But yeah, you know, I think that people like having something to do, like tangible to be able to actually do. And so I think a lot of them do that. And then we can work on, you know, some of the things they're afraid to do on their own in session. And then the things that they're not as afraid of, like maybe a sleep issue, or if they're an athlete, maybe dealing with the yips or whatever, right? They can deal with that with Therapy Shortcut, which is what our website is called. And then we can deal with the bigger stuff in therapy. And a lot of times as they, you know, deal with these little things, then they feel comfortable then going to the flash therapy, 4-blink flash therapy, and actually working on their bigger issues. So that's kind of the progression of a lot of people. When you see that progression, and maybe especially from someone who's like, I don't know about this, what is some of the typical feedback you get from your clients after they try the 4-blink flash therapy? A lot of them are like, that was weird. Why did it work? Why am I feeling better? Is it going to last? Yes. And it generally does last. But the thing is that if you have to come back in 2 months and do it 3 more times, who cares, you know? Especially because it's so affordable. Now, that's always going to be the other part that I think, you know, especially in a capitalistic society, the first question is going to be like, why is this affordable? So it is very accessible to a wide range of people. Was that always the goal, to make it super affordable? That was always the goal. That's always been my passion. Even with the EMDR tools that we offer therapists, were, I believe, the cheapest that, you know, is out there from my understanding. And I just have a passion to help the most people possible. And, you know, I have my license. I work on that. I love what I do. I always joke with people, if I won the lottery, I would still be doing therapy. I really love it. I'd probably be bored, you know, to not be doing something. And so this is just out there to heal the world. And in fact, Tom Zimmerman, who created this technique, I asked him, do you want to cut? What do you want from it? He's like, I just want it to go out to as many people as possible. I'm like, okay, well, how much do you want from it? He's like, I don't want anything. Like, I don't feel right doing this and not giving you something. He's like, all right, maybe once you start making a lot of money, you can do scholarships or something like that. And I'm like, okay, I'll do scholarships in your name. And he goes, no. It doesn't have to be in my name. I just, you know, it's like, I think a lot of us in this field don't necessarily want recognition. We just want to heal people, because I think, you know, you look at over 75% of people in jail are, you know, people who've been victims of something, and they're traumatized and they're acting out, and that doesn't give them an excuse to do it, but it is a reason. And so the more people we can get out there that have mental health options and can work on that, then it makes a safer world, honestly, for my kids too, you know? And that's a huge payment. Yes.
So as a therapist, we're in America, which is an interesting place to be right now. When when you think about a lot of what we're seeing in our world, do you think if people really addressed their issues in therapy in some way, that maybe we wouldn't have to have some of these hard conversations that we're having to have in our society right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are acting out of fear, and even the people in control, I think,
Mm-hmm.
are afraid, right? They're afraid of gay people, trans people, Black people, Venezuelans,
Right.
they're just afraid of everybody. And on the other side, they're afraid of like being homeless, not being able to feed their kids. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of trauma. And I really believe, and I don't know what percentage of the population agrees with me, but
Mm-hmm.
I do believe a majority of our issues, even global warming,
Uh-huh.
and I know that's probably a big statement, could probably be solved if people had easy access to mental health, because maybe we would be able to care about other things and see beyond our own situation if we weren't always in crisis ourselves. That's my hope, because I do have a lot of hope in our civilization.
Right. I think that's a great point, because I think my reluctancy going into this was like, I don't know why, I can't relax. I don't know why I can't get to sleep. And so when I hear people, hate is a big issue in our society for whatever reason, but I don't think people know why they hate sometimes. So I'm always like, how do you fix a problem when you don't know the why? But I think this is kind of proven to me is that sometimes you don't need to know the why. You just have to address the problem, which I thought was very fascinating about this.
Yeah, and that's a really cool thing too about it, is that a lot of people, they just want a solution. They
Mm-hmm.
don't need to know why. And
Mm-hmm.
therapy, a lot of times with a therapist, can go into maybe why and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
for this, you really don't need to. And honestly, if you don't have the issue anymore, you kind of don't care anymore
Right.
about
Right.
why.
Mm-hmm. So how can people who are listening to this and are fascinated, and I'm obviously going to do a more in-depth write-up, which you'll be able to see at JackieRayTV.com or LBWatchdog.com. So if you are like me and you just have to know the ins and outs, I'm definitely going to make that available for you. But I think sometimes, to your point, people just want, somebody somewhere is listening to this and saying, oh, I have this issue. PTSD, I know, is a big thing for that this works in. And I think sometimes people also forget that, at least in my experience as a journalist, when people think PTSD, they're thinking military people or people who have been through something extremely violent. Um, PTSD can come in all sorts of forms, right? Would that be a correct
Yeah.
assessment?
Absolutely. And actually, in the EMDR community and the 4 Blink Flash community, we like to call it more adverse life experience as
Okay.
opposed to PTSD, because PTSD and trauma, I feel like, are so loaded now. And like, do you really? And is yours better than mine or worse than mine or
Mm-hmm.
whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And an adverse life experience can really be anything that knocks you down. It could be, that you struck out in baseball and you look over in the crowd and your parent looks disappointed. That
Mm-hmm.
could be an adverse life experience that affects everything you do and how you think about yourself. And so it doesn't have to be a full blown trauma, but yeah, you're exactly right on that point.
Yeah. I'm so excited for this, and I'm so excited that it's so affordable. So how can people tap in and take advantage of the free trial and then the $20 a month?
So if they go to therapyshortcut.com, they'll get the $20 a month, 7-day free trial. If they go to your link, which you'll
Yes,
send them, they'll get
I
a
will.
30-day free trial and $15 a month. So they'll be saving $5 a month, and the annual will be cheaper too. There are people who do want to just do the annual because they're like, stuff's going to come up and I'd rather do that. But yeah, so they can just go to therapyshortcut.com and look at it. But I would recommend using your link, because it's going to give them not only a longer free trial, but a cheaper monthly rate as well, and an annual rate.
Yes, I love that. And that's going to be exclusively at JackieRayTV.com. It'll be in the article link. I'm so excited for this. I'm always looking for ways to give back. And as a person who's gone through both traditional and then this therapy, the other upside for a lot of people that I personally, your schedule is your schedule. I feel like all day, every day. And so sometimes that's been my struggle with traditional therapy, is figuring out when, because as a journalist, your schedule is fluid. Like if I schedule it for 3 o'clock today, tomorrow I might not be able to do that. But with this, you can do it on your own schedule in the privacy of your own home, comfortable, get your favorite blanket, some tea right by you, watch a video, and eventually you will just be so comfortable in your own space. It's really rewarding in that way to just sit in your own space, and you kind of lose yourself. You're sitting there watching your favorite. I love pandas, so I watch a lot of panda videos when I was doing it. So, you're giggling at the pandas and their interaction with their little ones, and it's great. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing. And you very quickly realize that you're in a very safe space. And the mind is fascinating. Its ability to really, the thing that I was so taken aback by was I literally could visualize me putting, the thing that I picked was a blanket instead of just visualizing like the bed. I put the blanket in the box. I literally in my head folded it up and put it in the box and then watch it go. And then it was like, well, that's cool. And so you just kind of grow with it. And so it's definitely a blessing. It'll be a blessing to you if you need it. Obviously, I want to think of more ways to help, but if you can help heal yourself in some way, I want to help you be able to do that. And I'm so thankful that you gave me this opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and thank you for trying it out. That's huge. And I will tell you, there's nothing like, so the difference between flash therapy and 4-blink flash therapy, for the most part, is flash therapy, you have a therapist there doing it. And with 4-blink flash, you don't. So in flash therapy, you just have a therapist trying to engage you like small talk all the time. And with 4-blink flash, I've sat with people while they do it the first time. And it is the most amazing difference when you're doing regular therapy and someone's working on issue and they're crying and they're having emotions, obviously, compared to when they're doing this 4-blink flash, they're sitting there laughing their PTSD away. And that is the most freeing feeling and cool feeling that I've ever experienced in my 30 years of being a therapist.
Yep. Joy is healing. It's healing. Amy, thank you so much for doing this. It's been such a pleasure. And this all started with one story, and that's just been my life. I'm so excited. You guys make sure you check out that link. I'm going to put the link everywhere. It's going to be I'm putting on my link tree. So if you're following me on any of my social medias, you can check it out there. So you'll see it anywhere that I am, you'll be able to get this link. And then do me a favor. Once you do the therapy, when you have success, because you will, because my brain is stubborn. If I can have success, I know anybody can have success in this. Drop me a DM so I can share that with Amy and so she can be encouraged as well and know that the work is getting out there. So I am so thankful for you taking this time to share with my audience. And I'm thankful for you giving them this amazing link and this opportunity to do this.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, you guys. So make sure, again, check out that link. Thank you for watching the Jackie Ray Show. This is our first virtual one in a long time. And remember, life is short, so make it good and take care of each other. We'll see you next time.